What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Week 4 college football breakdown show. Sorry for the delay here, but should be up. Probably won't have a lot of live viewers, but most of you are probably watching on replay. Going to be a pretty fun slate, so I'm going to go game by game, as we always do here. Going to go from high level to look at the slate in general, and then we'll jump into game by game. So if you guys haven't joined us, be sure to check out the description of the video and grab a copy of our cheat sheet for the week. We have monthly, we have annual, we have weekly options for all of the slates or all the sports that we cover. You've got college football, NFL, pretty much everything. You could ask soccer. We had Champions League through the week, EPL tomorrow, MMA. We have pretty much anything that you would want. So be sure to check us out there. So high level on the slate, there's just not, that one game that everybody's going to be going to, in my opinion. There's some underpriced spots for some guys in different positions that people will make popular. But there's quite a few games kind of in a range of the upper 50s in terms of total. You've got Florida, Mississippi State is 58, Kansas, West Virginia 56.5, Arkansas, Auburn 56, UCLA, LSU 56, Arizona State, Texas Tech 59, and then you got Georgia Tech, Louisville 56.5. So a lot of games very similar, which I think makes this a fun one because you're going to have a spread out ownership, in my opinion. We need to find a good spot, and we're not going to have to worry about ownership when we find that. So in terms of game by game, you've got Florida and Mississippi State first. 6.5 point favorite for Florida here. Interesting. You've got the underpricing now for the Florida receivers with no Eugene Wilson here. Badger and Jameer DK are both 5K and 4,800. I think they get some play here. Look to both be carrying some ownership. The quarterback position for Florida is kind of questionable. What are we going to see? Who are we going to see? Will it be a mix of Lagway and Graham Mertz? I think it will be here. But both of those guys are really cheap if you're looking for, probably to me, a more cash game option. Maybe you could go to one of those two in tournaments, and if you just fall in that range. But they're not going to be guys, I don't think, that I prioritize, but they should get definitely some play at that price tag. Those price tags. Mississippi State, don't see a ton that I'm really interested in over there. Shapen's 8K, don't have a lot of interest in that. Home dog for Mississippi State here, just don't get it, going for me in my opinion. Really, it's just going to be those two receivers for me in this game. I think that's all I'm going to be getting to. Elijah Badger, Jameer DK again. Really the only two guys I think in this entire game. You could play Montrell Johnson. He has this backfield, kind of a workhorse type role. 5,900 is a fair price, but not something I'm going out of my way to target. Marshall and Ohio State. Ohio State's a 39.5 point favorite, implied for 45. I think that's probably the highest on the slate. Howard, 8,300. The backfield, split again. I just don't think you can really get there to Henderson and Judkins when they're both priced at this right around 7K range. And they're a true split here so far this year. Jeremiah Smith, you can always play him, 7,500. Egbuka is 64. I think he's in play as well. I'm going to full fade Marshall, not any reason to place a team with a 6-point implied total on a slate this big. So really for me on Ohio State, it's just, do you play Jeremiah? Do you play Egbuka? And where do you go, after that? I think Howard is okay. He's going to be a tournament look for me. Really, this is just a tournament spot in Ohio State because they're going to score points. Do they get it on the ground? Do they split it up kind of evenly across the whole team? Or is there a guy or two that really gets it? So I think you can definitely go to Ohio State in tournaments here. Howard, Smith, Egbuka, all in play. Houston, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a 3.5-point favorite at home in a 48 total. So a close one projected here. For Cincinnati, I think Corey Kiner is going to get some play at 5,200. Looks to be the lead guy in this backfield for sure. Houston has not been, an imposing team by any means. Xavier Henderson is going to also get some looks. He is definitely the number one guy in this offense so far this year. And Joe Royer, who we played a couple weeks ago, 38, still under 4K, so 3,800 for a 17% target share. Definitely interested in him as well. Sorsby is okay. I don't know that, again, I don't think he's one of those guys that you're prioritizing. But really all the skill position players for Cincinnati are viable. On the other side, I haven't played any Houston all year. I don't think I play any Houston here either. They spread out. The passing game's so spread out. The backfield's a split. Smith is hit or miss, and he doesn't have tons of rushing upside. So I think I'll stay away from them, and I'll get exposure to this game on Cincinnati. Kiner, Henderson, Royer, and maybe a Sorsby look there. Kansas, West Virginia. West Virginia, 1.5-point favorite. 56.5 total. Garrett Green at home here. Does his ownership come down a little bit after last week? Kind of busted a little bit against Pittsburgh. Now he's 7,800 fair tag. I think I'll definitely be interested in him. He's, to me, one of the top 3 quarterbacks on the slate with his rushing upside. Solid matchup here against Kansas. I think West Virginia can put points on the board. I mean, they're projected for around 30. Do you pair them with somebody here? Fox, Clement, Ray? It's just kind of a shot in the dark to me, as always, with this West Virginia receiving core. Donaldson looked pretty good last week. He's only 4,900. I think he's, viable if you need a mid to cheap range running back. White would be the pivot at 53. I think either one of those would really be, viable. I would lean Donaldson. We saw him get a receiving touchdown last week from Green. So those would really be my 2 favorite plays from West Virginia. Green, clear cut above everybody else, and then Donaldson. On the other end, you've got Kansas, Jalen Daniels, 8K. Devin Neal, 74. Grimm, Arnold, Skinner. I rarely ever play the receivers on this team. I don't think that'll change here. I don't see myself getting to Jalen Daniels either. So probably not going to have any exposure to the passing game. Devin Neal, don't see getting to him really either. At 7,400, just a kind of a tough tag. So overall, kind of similar to that last game where I'm going to get exposure to one side, but mainly this game is Garrett Green only for me. Maybe a little bit of CJ Donaldson. NC State, Clemson. Clemson's a 19-point favorite here. The big news is, of course, that NC State will start C.J. Bailey after injury there at quarterback. So, what do you get out of him? Conception, continue a strong volume. I don't think you can really play him here. Not an easy matchup on the road, and new quarterback play without McCall. Don't think you can get there. On the other end, there's one of the top, maybe the top running back on the slate is Phil Maffa. $6K is just way too cheap for the volume that he's been getting so far this year. He'll be somewhat popular, but I think you can definitely play him and just get different elsewhere in your lineup. 19-point favorite, implied for 31. Not really scared of the NC State defense. So Maffa would be the clear favorite for me in this game. Don't know that I can play any receivers for Clemson. Williams, the tight end Beeringstool, 48 and 5K. Tyler Brown, 39. Just don't really have. Again, it's one of those spots I haven't played pretty much anybody all year, and don't think I'll start here. Just going to stick to Maffa. Arkansas and Auburn, really good spot here that we want to get some exposure to. You've got Auburn is a 2.5-point home favorite with a 56 total. We'll start with Auburn. Jarquez Hunter would be the main guy for me on this side of the ball. Hank Brown looks like he's going to start here. Lambert Smith, Camden Brown. You got Cam. I'm blanking on the last name, but Cam, the freshman receiver for Auburn, is out. And that's going to bug me until I figure that out. Cam Coleman, I believe, is out here in this one. So you've got a couple of those guys stepping in behind. Really don't think I'm going to get there. Also, just noticed it looks like there's something wrong with the stats because it's feeding in that Hank Brown's threw 20 touchdowns so far this year. So I'll have to take a look at that after we hop off here. Looks like everybody else is it's pulling something wrong. So I'll get that fixed on the sheet. On the other side, Taylon Green, I think, is a really good quarterback option here. He can run. 7,500 is just too cheap. I think you can pair him up with Andrew Armstrong, who has a 24% target share. Only played in a couple games this year too. Looks very good. 13 targets per game through the two that he's played. So really like that pairing quite a bit. I'll be interested to see on the stack tool where that shows up. So we'll see there. But really like that option. That's really it in this game. Hunter's okay for Auburn, and then Taylon Green and Andrew Armstrong make quite a bit of sense as a pairing for Arkansas here in a really closely lined game. LSU, UCLA. LSU's a 21-point favorite here. Kind of surprising to me that they're that big of a favorite. Nussmeier, 8,100. You've got Lacey, C.J. Daniels, Mason Taylor. In the receiving game, I think you can – Aaron Anderson even, 4,200. I think you can play these guys. They make some sense. Nussmeier is a really good passer. Not going to give you much with his legs, but he can chuck the ball around. We've known that, for years as he's got a little bit of time behind other quarterbacks here at LSU. So Daniels at 56 is quite interesting. I'm just kind of waiting on his breakout game, and could be here. There, I mean, they're projected for almost 40, so it definitely makes sense to get some exposure to this offense in tournaments for sure. Josh Williams, I mean, he's cheap, but this backfield's very split. On the other side, you've got Garbers, who I don't think we're playing here. Harden gets involved in the passing game quite a bit, 6,500, a little too high for me in this matchup. In the receiving game, if you want to run back, you've got a couple options. You've got a really cheap Matavao, 16% target share, 5 per game. I think he's an okay run back. Other than that, I'm really kind of surprised with what I'm seeing in this receiving game so far this year. It's really spread out. Rico Flores actually leads the target share through a couple games. So you're really just taking a shot in the dark. So mostly it's the LSU pass game here as a tournament look, and maybe you run it back if you want something in this game with one of those cheap UCLA receivers. Arizona State, Texas Tech. This is a spot that we're going to have quite a bit of interest in the run games. You've got Scatabo on the Arizona State side. You've got Taj Brooks on the Texas Tech side. Both in that 7K range, probably, right up there with Maffa as some of the top running backs on the slate. Really good matchup. I think even better, more so for Scatabo against Texas Tech. Massive volume. I don't see how I get away from playing him here this week. Brooks, again, very similar thing. Big workload in the couple games that he's played, and I think he gets right back to that here. So both of those are really interesting. The passing game for both of these teams, Jordan Tyson has looked really good, near 30% target share. Played him, I think it was on the late night or night slate. I can't remember. I think last week or the week before. He looks to be the guy for this offense in the pass game. Levitt is just kind of too expensive. I know he's ran the ball some this year, but I think he's just slightly too expensive for me on this slate. On the other side, Josh Kelly's 65. I think he kind of starts to separate himself as the guy in this receiving core. So I think you can play him. Morton, again, kind of similar to Levitt, just a little too highly priced for me. Up there in the mid eights. So Josh Kelly, I think, is definitely in play, though. I think the volume is there. They're going to throw this football. I mean, if it's not Brooks getting a run, I mean, they're throwing it near 60% of the time. So Kelly's volume is definitely going to be there. 6,500, I think he's in play for sure. All right, Miami, Ohio, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 27.5-point favorite, implied for 35 here. Riley Leonard is 7,700, which is fairly cheap. Definitely think you can get to him. He's probably in the top 5 of quarterbacks on the slate. The question, I guess, is are you pairing him with anybody? And I don't think you are. I think you're playing him more so for the rushing upside that he brings. Just a really spread out target tree here for Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love in the backfield is cheap. 5,500 seems a little cheap in this matchup, especially against Miami, Ohio. I'm probably going to, again, under 10-point implied total, going to fade Miami, Ohio. We'll get to them when we get some max slates. We can play some of those guys. But in this one, it's Leonard and Love are the main two options for me in this one. Georgia Tech and Louisville. Louisville is a 10-point favorite and a 56.5 total. This is a very interesting game stack spot. You've got, for Georgia Tech, Haynes King, 7,600. I think that could be a sneaky little spot there. Not pulling a whole lot of ownership up against Louisville. They're still projected for into the 20s in points, and I think we could get a little shootout here. Singleton and Rutherford are the two main receivers if you wanted to pair King, and I think you can do that. Pick one of those and do it. Jamal Haynes, the running back, not as interested in him. He's in the 6K range. If he was in the mid fives, I think I would be more, but not really into that here. On the other side, Tyler Shuck, 7,200 is just too cheap here, and definitely have tons of interest in him. Can you pair him up with anybody is the question. Ja'Cory Brooks is only 48, over 20% target share in the first couple games. So I have an interest in that. Chris Bell is okay at 4K if you're going to go that route. But Ja'Cory Brooks is, point per dollar, probably one of the top few receivers on this entire slate here. In the backfield for Louisville, both guys are pulling some ownership here in the low fours. It's just the price tags, I think. Turner, 42, Brown, 4K. Really a spread out. Let's look at the rush attempts by game for LSU. Really a spread out, LSU. Louisville. Really spread out workload here. You've got Turner, who had 4 and then 12 carries. Kewan Brown had 9 and then 5, and Isaac Brown had 5 and 8. So really, all those guys are going to get work. And you could definitely play, especially if you're game stacking, a Turner or a Brown, Isaac Brown, in my opinion, in this one. But, most of the exposure, you're going to probably look at something like a Shuck, Ja'Cory Brooks. Those two guys are some of the more popular plays in this game. And then the running game for Louisville. And then if you really want to stack this one up and hope it goes crazy, you can go to the Haynes King, Singleton, Rutherford route on the other side. Virginia Tech and Rutgers. Tech is a 3.5-point favorite at home and a 44.5 total. Pretty low scoring projected affair here. There are a couple options on both sides that we can look at. For Rutgers, 7,600 for Monangai. Probably butchered that name, of course. But he's getting massive workload. Antoine Raymond behind him is just not really it. If we look at Rutgers, backfield, 19 and then 27 carries for him. There were 17 carries for Raymond behind him as well. But definitely got to have interest in that workload at 7,600. On the Tech side, Drones is 81. We know that he has upside with his legs. Tootin is 77. A lot of what Tech does goes through him, and I think you could definitely look to either one of those guys. I would lean Drones, just as a tournament look here. All these guys are tournament looks on this Tech side, especially in the passing game. Ollie Jennings is only 3,800. Jalen Lane was the guy who got it last week. Maybe this week it's Ollie Jennings for cheap. That's really it here. You got the running back there for Rutgers, Monangai, and then maybe a Tootin or Drones is really all I'm looking at in this one. Couple more games, USC, Michigan, 44 total. USC's favored by 4.5. This is probably going to be a cross-off for me. Don't like targeting Michigan games. Michigan's been horrific so far this year. USC's been pretty good, but don't think you can really play anybody against a pretty tough defense, even though offensively Michigan's kind of looked lost. So this is really just going to be a skip and move on for me. Utah, Oklahoma State to close this thing out. Utah's favored by 1 and a 53.5 total. Not a ton here either that I'm looking at. On the Utah side, Micah Bernard's only 5,800. I think that's in play. The passing game is pretty spread out. Singer's kind of the lead guy, whereas Keithy is the touchdown guy, though, so far this year. Rising is 7,900. Don't think that I can get there. Alan Bowman on the other side had a pretty good big game last week at 83, though. Just not the type of guy that I really love to play. Ollie Gordon, 97 with 0 ownership. Just hasn't had the things fall his way, really. It was the passing game. They've been throwing it quite a bit, and they had that going last week. They've got Presley, Stribling, Owens. All those guys are solid receivers, and that can happen to Ollie sometimes. But there are going to be games that he's the workhorse big time and puts up a big number. So I don't think anybody's playing him at 9,700 this week. I guess you could get there. Presley, like I mentioned, Presley, Stribling, Owens are the 3 guys that you can always look at in the pass game. Presley, almost 30% target share. Stribling had the big game last week, so now you got him priced at a significant amount above Owens, who is the cheapest of the 3 and only 4,700. I think I prefer, again, you can kind of play all those guys if you wanted to, but just to kind of, none of them are priorities. So in tournaments, I think you could play any of the 3 and get away with it. So that's all I've got. Let's take a look at the stack tool really quick and see what we've got going here. Louisville ranks out the top on the list, so that's interesting by quite a bit, actually. We'll see how that updates overnight. If any, slight changes. Cincinnati and Arkansas are next. And again, these are double stacks, just to kind of give you an idea. Of course, don't have to double stack, especially in college, but these give you a good idea as, how's the team priced as a whole. So Louisville, definitely the top overall look. Cincy and Arkansas. Ohio State looks good with Jeremiah and Egbuka, even though they're, fairly high priced. LSU looks all right. Nussmeier to Daniels and Mason Taylor. West Virginia with Clement and Cole Taylor looks okay. So, yeah, I think that's where I'm at on this slate. I'll give you, my favorite little bit off the board stack, and I'm thinking that's going to be Georgia Tech here. So, I like both sides of that game. Shuck, maybe you play Haynes King on the other side, run it back, and really get it going there. So that's all I've got for this week. Good luck to everybody. I will have ranks for all the slates up here tonight, and we'll have all that ready for tomorrow for the night and the main slate tomorrow. We will be back in the morning for the NASCAR show for Bristol tomorrow night, and then we'll also be back tomorrow night for the NFL show for week number 3. So hope to see everybody at those. Hope to see you in the Discord as well. Good luck to everybody this week, and we will see